Good afternoon, everyone, and our apologies. Zoom's been a little wonky today, so I had trouble getting in. And then, of course, they sent verification codes to Cassie Bonifat for the region. So here we are. We have survived Zoom for the day. David, how the heck are you?
Nice to see you, Brian.
Good to see you as well. So, folks, just to be very, very candid with you, we got notice of this yesterday. I think we got a little bit of scope of speakers. I'm psyched to be here and talk with you guys. I was going to go through a variety of things, seller servicing, talk about shifting in the market, but I want to make sure we're delivering what you guys want to talk about. And I've been in this business 30 years. I absolutely love it. This is probably the third or fourth shift that I've been through. What would be, and maybe use the chat box or even just shout out, what would be the most valuable thing that, or two or three things that we could discuss today to keep you guys growing towards your goals and thriving in a very interesting time? Again, feel free to unmute yourself and speak up or even use the chat. Left to my own accord, I'll start talking about the shift in the market, seller service.
No, I'm here to wrangle you back. No, guys, I've got your backs today. We're going to be focused. Everybody's shy today because they think it's Monday, but it's actually Tuesday, guys. Go ahead.
I'm thinking for people that may have already been through a shift, some things that they wish they had done differently, maybe the do's and the don'ts that they learned from doing it previously.
Excellent.
Just
Love
a
it.
thought.
Love it.
What I wish I had known then.
Yes.
Gotcha. So shift V2, what I wish I had done. I love that.
What else comes to mind? Carolyn, love your contributions.
So I think I like that question because Brian, like you said, you've been through a lot of shifts, right? And what do you do differently? So I like that question. And I think I talked last time about what I'm doing differently, which is it's different, but the same, which is going back to all my past clients, right? All my past clients, and just really, really having time to, this week I delivered some flower baskets, I did some things like that because I'm not that busy with, listing appointments or buyers right now. So I just went back to that to help bring value. And also I think when you're going through a shift, hold on, I'm gonna shut my doors.
Her door is shifting. She's going to close it.
Right, just to be the voice of calm, right, with people. And I think we try to change our language to, this is a crazy market, or things are just wild, or things are plunging, or things are shifting, just to be more calm with people, as if the last few listing appointments I had were 2 divorces. One person selling a father's house who died, right? So really back to the basics, right? This is what we do. We help people through these transitions. So to be the voice of calm for that, and to be the voice that helped them out, I think that helps through these traditions rather than just, freaking out or, adding to the stress that everyone's feeling with $5 gas, inflation, and, higher interest rates. So that's just what I do
I love it.
during shifts, just try to calm down a little.
You also triggered some questions that popped in my mind, which I'd love to, again, welcome everybody. Make sure we're checking the chat. Brooke, it seems like you're helping with us. Shift K. Also, we'd love to see your cameras on. If you're bashful or you're having a bad hair day, as I occasionally have, I understand, but we'd love to see on. And so maybe that actually kicks off questions specific to segments that we're working with. What do you guys think we should be doing with different, and I'd welcome anybody who's been through a shift before to lead the answer with this. What do we do differently with buyers right now? Compared to, because I don't know about you guys, in Vermont, we had a listing that had 19 offers on it, and 3 miles away in a more desirable town, we started to see price reductions. I call it sloppy. Sort of like water in a bucket. And Mr. Hire, I'm going to call on you because I know you've been through a couple of shifts before. What would you recommend anybody, going through a shift with buyers? What would you recommend they do differently?
I've been through several, yeah. And I wish I had been better prepared for the last one, even though I knew it was coming. In other words, I thought my business was so strong. This is back when I was in production heavily and running my own brokerage at that time, that I couldn't be affected by it because I had so much business, right? And I didn't double down, and I didn't get back to the basics, and I didn't check my mindset, and I was left behind those that were, right? I mean, it's no different than what's in the shift book. You all got the shift book, page 23, tactic one. Tactic one on page 23, get real, get right. Mindset and action. If you say to yourself that, and prepare yourself that it's going to happen, and participate, right? You can either, when there's change, you can either react or participate, right? And participate in it, and even if there's still 19 offers coming in, run your business like there's not going to be 19 offers coming in. And I wish I'd done more of that.
David, can you dig into the basics? So a lot of the times we say these things, the basics, dig back into your basics. Hit us with those basics. What are the basics of being an agent?
Well, it's no different than the basics of being the best professional athletes out there. Let me use that analogy. I love basketball, right? What's the difference between an average basketball player and the best of the best?
The jersey.
But the jersey?
Practice.
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 Right?
Whoever said practice.
Practice, right? Practice.
Sure, love it.
Yeah, they spend hours doing the things that bore most people. They're at the foul line doing 100 shots, 1,000 shots. They're out an hour before everybody else. They're doing more than everybody else. And it is boring, because it's boring until you're actually out there in the game. So doubling down on doing the boring, the lead gen, the lead follow-up, meeting new people. Maybe you do have to do 4 hours of lead gen to get 20 contacts in one appointment. Who knows?
I think that really resonates with me, because I think right now, like I was talking to actually Adam Hergenroth, a good friend and business partner, and he was talking about the basics today being, really of 4 things. Have you made your phone calls? Have you set appointments? Have you written a contract? And I forget what the 4th was, and probably follow up. Thank you very much, Cheryl. Thank you very much. Does anybody care to volunteer what they may be doing differently with sellers? And I've got something that maybe Carolyn's heard once or twice from me in the last, because she and I are in the same market center, but any different approaches with sellers?
Brian, I just want to say back to what David was saying about the basics, and Brooke was asking, getting back to the basics, like getting back to the basics with sellers. I did 3 listing presentations over the weekend, and you need to go through the process, right? You have to tell them, here's the process. And I think what David was saying was, let's prepare them for what may not be 18 offers, right? Let's prepare them for what might be, yes, you want 425 for this place, but let's prepare you for maybe we're only going to get 380, right? You might hear at work there's 19 showings on whatever the listing you were talking about, but let's prepare them for maybe there's only going to be 5. So I think going back to the process of it with sellers and going back to, I found myself going so back to what we need to do, the consumer information disclosure, the contract, things like that, what the process is like. They don't know, right? They don't know what the process is like. They haven't gone through it. And I think we've spent a lot of time, and I've seen agents, in this marketplace, just running through things with sellers. Like, you don't need to do anything to your house. Let's put it on the market. It's going to sell, However, I think we're getting to the point in the market where you're going to need to clean the dishes out of your sink, right? You're going to need to clean the cat box. All right. I was in 3 listings over the weekend with buyers with the cat boxes that needed to be cleaned. And what was the problem with that? Was it their fault? No, it was the agent's fault. The agent didn't say, hey, you need to clean your cat box. Hey, you need to, move some of your stuff around. Hey, you should put your dirty dishes in the dishwasher. So it's the agents too that are driving the sellers for what they do. And we need to prepare the sellers for buyers are going to be pickier, right? And then what are we doing with buyers? For my buyers, I really only want to sign them up for 3 months, right? To see how much they can tolerate the market. And if they can't tolerate it, I'm just going to have them sit out for a while longer. That being said, I had to fire some friends who I've been working with for 5 years who I just can't do it anymore. They need to sit on the sidelines. So that's kind of, I think that's what, people are sort of headed toward. And I don't know what you were going to talk about with your seller, what you were going to talk about, but I really think we need to go back to, and like Brooke, like we're saying, back to the basics, explain the process for them, what it was like now and what it's like then. The sellers that I talked to, they wanted to price it high and then they were going to come down. I told them that's not how this market's working right now. We're going to price it and maybe it's going to go up, but let's find a spot that you're happy at. We can't go quite back to where we were in the market. We're like you're saying, it's shifting, it's changing, and we just need to watch it carefully.
Yeah, actually, Carolyn, I always grow in our conversations and thinking about the 3 months when probably a lot of us do 6 months to a year. I think that's wise so that we don't also get challenges of abandonment, let alone also you guys probably think this. And then Janet, I'd love to get to you in just a second. Also, how often are we checking base with our buyer clients lender? Because we just see the fluctuality with the rates, how much payments changed. If you talk to somebody 30 days ago, that may have changed what they can get approved at. Janet, you've been very patient. Always love your contributions. Please.
No worries. Hi. I'm from the North Shore of Boston, coastal area of Boston. And thank you for the opportunity to share. So echo to everything. And relative to the cat box, that's what made me raise my hand. So I don't know in your marketplace, but in ours, we're starting to see garden variety brokers popping up. They're not, they're like mom and pops, or who are these people? They're just, kind of no-name brokers. Mm-hmm. And it's obvious when you see how the presentation is online that they're not using professional services for photography and other things. So in my opinion, I think that it's prudent for us to keep our head high and maintain the quality of presentations. And couldn't say more, Brian, to your point about lenders. We're now being advised that if you don't have a pre-approval letter that's no more than 48 hours old, you might want to, advise your seller, that kind of thing. So the windows are really tightening up, and the conversations with buyers about affordability as the interest rate moves up. But I had a cancellation on a showing this morning, and thanks be to God, I'm happy that it happened, because I've been trying to cajole these people into a reality mindset on what their budget really is. But you have to let people self-discover. It's not that's the thing. So the cancellation of the showing resulted now in a real definition of what their buying power is. And it's almost like coming at it from, what do you want your monthly payment to be? And then back, this, I can't claim this. I've been really getting a lot of benefit from tuning into James Shaw's morning sessions. Yeah. So I don't do live at 8, but they're recorded. So I can't say how much, and, not to be ornery, but just this morning, there was the encouragement not to even use the term shift, because he asked on a national basis, everybody to chime in with what their absorption rates are. And we haven't pivoted, if you will, to that. It hasn't really tilted over to become a buyer's market. It's still very much a seller's market, So that's my 2 cents.
One is thank you very much. And I encourage everybody to jump in or even raise your hand. So, because I love this flow of information. One of my favorite quotes is alone we're a drop, together we're an ocean. And I think it really summarizes Keller Williams, one of its aspects of culture, which Simon Sinek would phrase as co-opetition. Meaning you cooperate with these people, you collaborate with these people. Yeah, you might occasionally end up competing with them. But at the end of the day, there's much a cooperator, if you will, or a co-opetitioner. So I love that. And you triggered a few thoughts. And I want to thank Emmanuel because he put something in our chat that's very helpful. One is, and this is, I pity my stepchildren because they get lectured by me all the time. It's somewhat out of fierce conversations. I firmly believe almost everything we desire professionally is on the other side of a conversation. So just think about that. Almost everything we seek professionally is on the other side of a conversation. So when David, you talked about going back to basics, if you've been in this business less than 2 years, what conversations have you likely not had to practice before? Price reductions.
Days on market.
Days on market.
Right? People now, something stayed in our neighborhood for 3 days. And the first thing somebody says to me is, what's wrong with that house in your neighborhood? And I said, nothing. There is nothing wrong with this home. But that's the reality right now.
Yeah. And I was doing script practice. I do script practice once a week. You guys are all welcome to join. I'll put my email in. We'll get you an invite if you want it. And we have a great guy, Terry Light. He and I practiced a price reduction conversation, and then we started laughing afterwards. We realized it was the first time in 2 years plus that we practiced a price reduction conversation. So segueing in, and I'll actually put my email in the chat if you guys want, either on our information or if you want to join us in one of our script practices. Now, one of the things that, Brooke, you touched on, and Janet, I encourage people to check out that shift, is stats. Now, Brooke knows me well enough. I'm a high I with a high D, and I have very little C. So you can imagine looking at spreadsheets is equivalent to putting my hand in a meat grinder. It's not something I like to do, but I know I need to do it occasionally. But we have, and Brooke, you may correct me if I'm wrong, if this changed. I believe most of us have access to a Teradatum software as part of our Keller Williams relationship. Teradatum, also known as Cloud Metrics or Broker Metrics, is a great software that extrapolates data from MLS and shows us everything from days on market, absorption rates, average price with no price reduction, or average price with one or more price reduction. I encourage you guys, as we go into this shift, if you're like me and have a small C, you're not really diving into stats, dive into stats and use them both with your buyers and your sellers, because it may help the buyers better understand the market as well as the sellers. And one of the things, and Carolyn and I are up in Vermont. Now, personally, my forecast in Vermont, we go from white hot sellers market to a seller's market. I don't think we're going to see in the core, areas that we're going to see a complete buyer's market. Maybe some of the rural areas will start to see that. Carolyn, disagree with me or challenge me if you agree. But I think, again, we're not going to see a big increase in inventory. That may be the same for a fair amount of Northeast, but I do predict California, Florida, Nevada are going to, swing more wildly. And let's see here. Brooke's checking the name of the software because I think they've changed.
Yeah, because it's Teradatum's the one that runs it, but Broker Metrics is what we have access to as leadership. But through your MLS, whether it's Pinergy, whether it's Niren, MLS Pin, it all depends on what you have with your MLS, but you can access that data. The other thing is hot sheets, guys. Hot sheets. I just asked Erica if we got the entire New England set of directions for how to pull a hot sheet. But you've heard Jen Bovey talk about it all the time. Knowing your numbers, she would pull the hot sheets every single day, because then you start to see the same property names, if they sit, how fast they go, on and off, the ins and outs. I called them always. But I'm going to find out where you can access that data.
Thank you very much. So maybe it's 1:25, and again, please keep all the contributions, the chats, the raising hands. Maybe we should spend 5-10 minutes discussing seller servicing for a changing market. Anybody care to describe how they would define seller servicing? Or have you never heard the term, which I'm okay, because if you've been in the business the last 2 years, seller servicing was you put a sign up, you sign a contract, you go to close.
You don't
I mean,
clean the cat box.
It hasn't always been that way.
Side note, some of you know this. I got into this industry when interest rates were 9.5%, and they went to 10% in the first 2 weeks. And I was so young, I asked people to explain why they were freaking out at the mortgage company I worked for. They explained to me and I didn't understand. And had I understood, I wouldn't be on this Zoom today. But there was a lot of opportunity. So,
Well, Brian, can I say something on that note? I mean,
please.
and I was thinking about this morning. I've been in this leadership role for 6 years, and there's an opportunity for me to get back into production. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have a listing presentation anymore. I don't have a buyer consultation anymore. Right? How many agents out there that haven't been using presentations or consultations because they haven't had to? And are you prepared when you do have to offer, here's my 13-step marketing plan. Here's the process in buying or selling a home. And I saw somebody put something very nice in here on the chat about the home buying process. Are you prepared for those kinds of conversations?
Yeah, I think we're spot on. You know, as a side note, and what I'm about to suggest for listing, and then a couple ideas in seller servicing. Please make sure this speaks to your marketplace, and don't hesitate to check with somebody else in this group. Make sure it applies to you guys. But one of the things I think we're seeing in our area is, just like I said, we had 19 offers on one property, and then a few miles away, we had price reductions at a zip code that we are not used to seeing price reductions in. So first, I would suggest some ideas for pivoting with sellers is, Carolyn touched on this, I think, on the buy side as well, but also on the list side. Try to find the most motivated. Now, personally, I think if you're a buyer in this market, don't waste your time with dabblers. And Carolyn, you just shared that must have taken guts. You de-hired a friend. You know, now on the seller side, what I say about checking the motivation, and this is going to sound like we're ambulance chasing a little bit, but keep in mind, if somebody's having a dark hour of their life and you can provide them value, and you can be that pillar of sanity amongst the chaos of, insanity, we can really provide amazing impact to people's lives. Divorce attorneys, bankruptcy attorneys, estate attorneys. We have, one independent agent, Laura Gould, who's, former PC. She's Action Island right now. She has found herself into, probably in the last 6 months, 5 or 6 estate situations. Bankruptcy attorneys. My father, rest his soul, used to get 5 to 7 transactions a year from a bankruptcy attorney. Market resilient sources. Now, going a little bit deeper, assuming you found somebody that's motivated, you might try this approach. This flies juxtaposed a little bit to what Carolyn said. Now, side note, I do think the best approach for a listing conversation about pricing is going with their basics. Yeah, these are what the last comp's for. This is what we think. And I definitely think a majority of the time, we're better to price right below the market to get a feeding frenzy. But if you have an opportunity in a tight market for inventory, and this is going to be controversial, and the seller is motivated. This is my first wife, rest her soul, used to use this a lot. She would go in and say, Ms. Silva, today we have 2 discussions to have. One, what we're going to do to market your home and expose it to a superior number of buyers in the marketplace, because after all, there's only two reasons why a house does or does not sell: price or exposure. Then she'd go through, as Dave would say, the 13-step marketing plan, and she would make sure that everybody agreed the home will be exposed to a superior number of people. So you might ask a question, would you, based upon our marketing plan, do you believe this will expose your home to a superior number of people? Get a yes. Side note, if you don't, you got to add more or talk more about it. And then this is the controversial part. The second thing we have to discuss today is the pricing strategy that you will choose to market your home. Now, a key word there is you choose. Now, here's where this is going to, if you go down this line and you think it's worth $500,000 and they want 10 million, maybe you just politely, you say, hey, I'm not the right agent for you. But and Carolyn's heard this story a little bit. Years ago, in a more challenging market, I had a property that was expired at 725. It was the house that love built and destroyed. One person was, dealing with internal demons and rehab, and they were going through divorce. It was, I think, an 8,500 square foot house that was studded, Tyvek, and had a 8-car garage that he had to lower his toe behind to back it in so he could live in his garage. I took that approach, what I just said, the 2 conversations. Now, I told him my training suggested 525. The guy wanted to punch me. Now, I politely leaned into it and I said, pretending it was David for a second, Mr. Hire, do you believe that I came here today knowing that you wouldn't like this number? And of course he said yes. And then I said, well, do I at least have your respect for showing up and telling you what I honestly thought? Now, at the end of that conversation, he wanted 75 or 725. I took it at 725. You know why? He was up for tax sale. So, this isn't, this doesn't happen every day, but my point being is he and I both agreed it was the pricing strategy he was going to choose. The market was going to speak. And I also knew that if he didn't listen to what the market had to say, he was going to be up for tax sale. So he was going to have to sell. Now, with humor, he ended up selling at 525. And it was the only time in my 30 years in the industry that I have a buyer say, well, if David doesn't want to accept the offer, I'll wait 2 weeks until the house is up for tax sale. It's a very motivating piece. Now, here's where I would not recommend you use that approach. If you don't have a good seller servicing plan, if they're not that motivated or they're just dabbling, because it could lead to a lot of wasted resources, dollars. But segue into a little bit of this mastermind. What do you guys think of when you think of seller servicing? Is it calling once a week, calling twice a week, or excuse me, every 2 weeks? Maybe going through web hit reports, maybe even putting your seller on a hot sheet as if they were a buyer in their neighborhood or their area so they could see what's happening in the market. I would also encourage you, the seller servicing, David mentioned he uses a 13-point marketing plan. When you're touching base with your sellers, go through what you promised to do to validate that you've done it. I did my just listed postcards, or I called X number of your neighbors. I called X. Now back to that simulation where we use the hypothetical. Would you agree, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this marketing plan will expose your home to a superior number of people? If you did that, you get their buy-in, and then you follow through on your marketing, is it possible that you could say, Ms. Silva, we followed through based on the marketing plan that you approved, and I apologize, but the market appears to be disagreeing with your pricing strategy.
Not you as the agent, but now you are blaming the market because the market is what dictates the price.
Bingo. Now, some agents, and I struggled with this when I was, more front lines. They what do I have to say to these people? We haven't had an offer. I don't want to call them. I don't want to talk to them. They don't want to talk to me. They're just going to get mad. Here's my argument with that is the only time they hear from us is when we tell them to lower the price. It's not going to be a good conversation. It's not going to be a good relationship. But another quick little story, similar situation. I recommended 650. He started at 725 after, getting expired with another company. At one point during the seller servicing calls, I politely said to this gentleman, he was a DC personality, very driven, very analytical. Occasionally was a challenge with my high I talk too much. I politely said to him, I don't enjoy these phone calls. There was silence. And then he finally chuckled and he said, care to explain? I said, yes, I call you every 2 weeks to tell you how much I love your house, has got beautiful views of the lake, but that the market's disagreeing with your pricing strategy and you don't do anything about it. Now that was a little brazen and could have gone in my wrong direction, but I got a 20 grand price reduction out of that maneuver. And I think 2-3 weeks later, we had it under contract. So I'm starting to ramble a little bit, but what else comes to mind that we could do for seller servicing? Talked about weekly calls, analyze web hit reports. I would, say put your buyers on hot sheets or prospecting cards so they see what's happening in the market.
Drip them in their neighborhoods. If you're not using the biweekly neighborhood nurtures with these people, you should have your sellers on them in the neighborhoods they are. Go 5-6 around so they can see what's really going in. In the chat, I also dropped one of the classic templates that lives in designs. For those of you who have been in this a year and a half, 2 years, and may not have seen this before, we tell you everything that the agent's going to be doing, and then you can go in there and remove what you would never do or add in extras that you do that may not be listed. You can take as many of those pages out, but it's a blueprint to get you started if you don't have a listing presentation.
Quick comment, and I'd love to go to Carolyn, then Janet. Lori, Joe Kotzen, if I pronounced your name wrong, my apologies. Maybe check the house immediately conditioner curb and peel. I think that's huge right now. Yeah, I think it's going to be definitely great. Carolyn, always love your contributions. Thank you.
So, hold on, let me lower my hand. I hate that little hand thing. I think what, this is, you're talking about like servicing after they're listed. I spend most of my time for seller servicing is done up front, right? So most of the time I spend like hours at their house. Then I go back. Then I go back again to see how they're cleaning it. Have they cleaned the cat box, right? Did they get rid of all the dishes in the sink? Then I go again when there's photos. Then I go again, the day of the showings, the first day of showings, to make sure, everything's going okay. The lockbox is, accessible. The keys, aren't messed up. There's notes on the door if there's no key to the back door that no agent, has locked it. So I do a lot of upfront servicing, and that really sets the stage for them that you're not playing catch up once they're in the process, because what they're hearing from people at work and from other people is, oh yeah, once you get your house listed with your agent, you're never going to hear from them again, right? But I'm like so immersed with them at the beginning that they want me to go away, right? They want me to go away by the time the showings start, because I'm there and I'm stopping by. Hey, did you get your furnace service? Let me go take a picture of the tag. Hey, let me know when you do your landscaping. I want to swing by and look at it. But again, Brian, and what we talked about in our market center is getting them signed up. So these people are signed up. They're my listings, right? But I'm waiting to get them on the market. So they have things to do. They have to paint. They have to change out light fixtures. They have to do things like that. They're already signed up and listed with me as an office exclusive. They're not on the public MLS yet, right? So I have this relationship with them. I'm not just stopping by to visit because it's the nice thing to do. I'm stopping by because they're my listing at that point, and I'm servicing them from the upfront, right? And I think the interesting thing is I've always done this, and people always say, oh, listings are so easy. You just go in and you list it, and then all the buyer's agents come. I never had that listing, right? Yep. All of my people have had to have like hand holding and, help and, a gutter guy and all these, who's my painter, and they need an electrician and all of this. They need someone to come help them clean out their house. So I'm the resource for that, but only after I get them signed up as a listing. So once you're like immersed with them and you're their like go-to person, those conversations are easier down the line, right, Brian? Like you're saying, like that one about the price reduction. What I always do is I give them a range of value and I tell them where I think it should be, but it's ultimately the seller's choice, right?
Mhm.
So I always circle what I think it should be, because down the road, they're going to call you and say, well, you're the one that told us to list it at 750. Well, wait a minute. No, that was your price. My price is right here. I circled it. It's 650, right? So that's part of keeping track of them. And I just keep track of them. And I'm literally over at my sellers' houses constantly. That's what I do. I'm usually on the road. Today I'm not on the road. Tomorrow I'm on the road all day, checking on them. So the seller
Can I ask
servicing.
a question, Carolyn?
Yeah.
Please, thank
Do
you,
you-
Cheryl.
Do you give them a price? Like I have people that have been, they wanted to do a million things, new carpet, paint, blah, 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 all of that stuff. And I have not given them a price, thankfully. I gave them a ballpark, but it's taken them a long time. And now I'm reaching out to a few sellers that I have and trying to push them along because I'm noticing such a difference in the market. And I almost don't want them to complete everything that they were going to do, because I feel like doing that $2,500 paint job could ultimately, cost them more money by waiting. Does anybody else feel that way?
Yeah. So that's really like, it's just like a price. It's a price point, right? So the price point where I have people like doing lots of things is like 750 and over here, which is like luxury for us here in Vermont. No one lives here. So 750 and above, that does make a difference, right? They need to get their trim painted. They need to pull up the carpet that's been there originally. They need to put something in the hole where the microwave was that they took out and couldn't find one to fit, right? They need to do all that stuff for that type of buyer. But back to like, what do I have them do? I ask them, what were you planning on doing, right? What are you planning on doing? And if they were planning on things, I'll help them based on the market, right? I had someone who was planning on restaining the front of their house, which was like a $4,500 job. And I said, don't do it. The new buyer may want to do a different color, right? Which it didn't look that great in the photos because it needed to be restained, but sure enough, the new buyer is going to restain it. So that's like your knowledge and your experience that's helping them out. And the more knowledge, that's what we get paid for, is our knowledge and our experience, and to stand out from what other agents might tell them. And I tell them right up front, another agent may come in and tell you you need to do X. However, with my knowledge in this price point, in this neighborhood, and in this market, I don't think you need to do that, right? But, back to the cat box, everyone's got to clean the cat box. Everyone's got to clean the nasty shoes out of the entryway. Everyone has to do basic cleanliness, to get to give a good first impression. But I hope that answered your question.
So one is love the feedback and comment, and I'd love to call on Janet, because unless you're all set with your contribution, love to hear your thought. One of the things that Carolyn just talked about is, signing the exclusives. I think as we all try to respect clear cooperation actually also creates opportunities for us. As a side note, we had one agent, and we do a lot of sharing, like I hope you guys are doing as well in your market centers, who said if they have a seller who's thinking of selling within 6 months, they'll sign the listing. Now, they will not sign it as an active, put an MLS. They'll sign it non-MLS. They'll make sure that they're not being held to like, hey, where's your buyer? Because you didn't bring me any buyers. Because Carolyn and her husband Joe said, hey, Brian, I don't really want to sell this to wintertime. But use that as a potential way to help get more inventory. Also, that puts you in a position where if buyer's interested and they don't see anything, you could call up that seller who's non-MLS and see if you can help them. But Janet, you had a contribution you were going to share.
Sure. Just to echo Carolyn, totally on board for those concierge services and to have the referrals for what needs to be done. And I've negotiated with vendors that they're on my list as VIP service providers, but if they do not respond to any referrals that I get, they're off the list, and that's their last referral from me. So totally get the, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and, price point, like you say, could have a bearing on that and what they do or what they don't do. But I am all over the non-MLS listings. I get them listed and then I use that as an energy building, tool for marketing. And we can use social media for non-MLS listings. And so anyways, I just, I liken it to the horses at the gate at the racetrack. They're chomping at the bit to get out. So I try to create enough interest for properties before, but what prompted me to raise my hand really in terms of seller service is I'm starting a plan that I always used to do, but COVID put it on the back burner. And I just did my first in-person broker open house lunch. And so we're starting to see a little bit more of that. Because I always tell sellers, I got to sell the house 3 times. First, I got to sell it to a buyer. Then I got to sell it. No, first I got to sell it to the broker community, because if the brokers don't buy in, they're not going to network to their buyers. Got to sell it to a buyer. Then I got to sell it to an appraiser. So I just try to create that energy. And I had a great, and people were coming and they were so thrilled. They were saying, this is the first time in 2 years that I've been to a broker open. So I think that that's a good service to start thinking about how we can leverage within the broker community, not just Keller Williams, but the broker community at large. So that was my 2 cents.
No, I love it. And I think we're going to get back to that. Side note, one of the things I was taught from Nate Malley in our office is he'll either give away a raffle or have somebody, agents, list what they think the house will sell for. Anybody knows me well knows I smoke way too much meat. And I got 11 people to a broker open in a blizzard because of a brisket. And it was great though. I had about 11 people say what they thought it would sell, so that I could say to the seller, here's 11 opinions of price. Now, in this case, they were all below what he was listed at. And the other thing too is just, I don't know about you guys, I hate the phrase scripts because I think of cold, I think of stale. When in reality, what Janet mentioned about this house, sell a house 3 times, I look at that as an algorithm. She repeats the algorithm multiple times because it resonates with a lot of sellers. So I'd encourage you to take that approach, but I'd also encourage you to use the phrase, like disagree with your marketing strategy, so it's not personal. The third thing is a phrase that really stuck with me. Mr. and Mrs. Doyle, unfortunately, as sellers and as agents, we do not control the market. We can only interpret it. And it just sort of it does 2 things. It mentally puts you right on the same bench with them as a team. It also takes the control out of your hands because you can't control it. And then it talks about the interpretation, which sets up conversations for possible future interpretations, up or down. What are the thoughts, questions that we have that comes to mind of things we can do in a shifting market? One pause before you answer that question. Keep in mind, there's a lot of people right now who are not leaning into this. They're not asking where they should do, how they should pivot, how they should change, how they should go with the market. So while and I don't know this to be certain, Gary Keller estimated we're going to see 15% less transactions this year. Now, don't quote me on that because I don't, specific, so it was passed along to me. So if you look at your marketplace and you're going to see 15% less transactions, what can you do to make sure you get, as we say, your unfair share? I would also argue as shift occurs and some people are going to resist the shift, my heart goes out to them, they're going to be in more pain. But as you guys embrace the shift and level up, get back to listing presentations, concierge service, stuff like that, I think you're going to have an opportunity to outpace your competitors because we have a lot of better for worse order takers as a result of the last 2 years. And if I offended you, please let me know so I can grow out of this. But what other thoughts are you guys doing to shift in this market?
I would say make more calls to the people who you think are sellers. And, I really like the phone anyway. So,
Mhm.
call your past clients. Do they know any friends? Do they have, how are they doing in their new house from a couple years ago? Things like that.
Yeah.
Just attack what just call. That's what I do.
What other
What would you
suggestions?
say? Sorry.
Please, Cheryl,
What-
go ahead. Other questions.
What would you say to like the past clients that you have, buyers that you have sold to, who are now going to be concerned that their home is going to continually decrease in value? What do you say to those folks in this? Because I follow up with everybody. I want to call and say, I always say, but how's the market? What's going on? They're going to ask that. And I feel bad that a lot of people are going to be at some point upside down, I want to say.
So one is,
I just heard Keeping Current Matters this morning discuss that. I can't exactly interpret it, but they said that there may be a deceleration, but not a depreciation. Now, you're going to have to take those words and
I
find out what they
understand.
mean.
Yep. A deceleration.
Yeah,
I like
because
that a
there's still
lot.
a huge demand,
So what was the other
And-
word? Deceleration?
but not depreciation.
Not, thank you.
If I can try to send it to you. I listened to it really carefully this morning, but I can't understand it well enough to explain it to you. But I can
Okay,
pass it
If you
along to
could.
you.
I love this sharing. The other thing I'll compliment, Lori, you just mentioned you're listening to podcasts, and I'm guessing podcasts are, or books about what's happening. So you're preparing. Janet or somebody mentioned they're on the pivot shift. So I encourage you guys as well, and I mean this respectfully. What are you guys doing to shift your mindset? Are you practicing more? Are you listening to books more? Are you going to classes more? Are you maybe going back to classes that you didn't think you needed anymore? Because this is what invigorates me about these markets, is the opportunity to better ourselves where others may choose to or not. But again, I think we can take our unfair share advantage. Side note, phenomenal book. And Carolyn, it's not going to be the Book of Joy. It's Peak Performance, and wherever my phone is, hang on just a second. And this book really resonated with me right now. It may not resonate with you guys, but they analyzed peak performance of athletes as well as professionals. And what was really interesting is the importance of helping others, i.e. taking time to teach a class or speak at an event that something's aligned with what you do, but you're not guaranteed to get any benefits back. Also, remembering that it's part of a long game, because I think when you look at a day-to-day basis, we can feel like, oh God, I didn't set any appointments today. I'm not a great agent. I'm not a great, versus I'm on a 3 to 5 year mission to make bank dollars so I can do this for X for my family. The other thing they talked about is rest. Because on one hand, I believe about doubling down, making more phone calls. But a story of somebody, a nickname Leonidas in our market center after the Spartan King. I love Leonidas because he's always pushing himself. He has a habit of setting 3-hour lead gen blocks and not hitting them. So what do you think he does to himself? Beats himself up. Now, I suggested yesterday, don't do the 3-hour lead gen. Set 2 50-minute sessions with 10-minute breaks. So actually taking an hour off his calendar. And it comes from Peak Performance, who's the person, he gave me the recommendation of the book, because they analyzed time blocks of our efficiency. And they found that most people will not make it be productive beyond 2 hours. A lot of people seem to work well in 50-minute to an hour blocks. So on one hand, yes, maybe we should double down, but let's just not double down if we think this is going to be a little bit more of a marathon than a sprint. And if we're true with ourselves and say, I'm going to be more productive if I actually do it in hour bursts. thoughts, questions? What else comes to mind, A to Z, that we can mastermind? We've got a few minutes left, and I really love the sharing that's occurring.
Hi, Brian, this is Sandy. One of the things that I just ran into today was, you know how you were talking about having a broker's open house?
Yes.
Instead of just a broker's open house, the broker ended up inviting other professionals within the business. So there was a title company there, there was an insurance company, and a lender. And they came into the house, and so what it was able to help the broker do was to give, we did evaluations, and then she will be able to go back and bring it to the sellers, because the sellers are so very stuck on their price that they do not want to drop their price, even though when we looked at the house, we all evaluated it probably 50 to 75,000 less than what they want. So I thought it was good, because if you're going in as someone who's going to insure the house and they're not going to insure it for that much, or, as a lender, the same thing. So I found that was so much more helpful than just doing brokers. So
I love it.
maybe that'll help.
There's a phrase, OPT, OPC, OPM. Other people's time, other people's contacts, other people's money. And what you just shared was a great example of that, because you used others, i.e. contacts, their time to help your seller. It also is the envision of you telling them, hey, your house is overpriced, versus, again, the analogy of 3, 4, 5, or in my case, when I mentioned the 11 people that it sort of helps in the discussion. We've got a couple minutes left. Anybody have an aha? Anybody's going to do something different as a result of our sharing today?
Yeah, Brian,
I
if
would
I could,
say-
Please, let's
Go
go
ahead,
with
Charlie.
Charlie, and then let's go back to Cheryl.
Okay.
Charlie, then Cheryl.
so going back to the broker open for a minute to get more exposure. I had been doing, prior to the crazy market, I had been doing Friday night neighborhood showings, just people in a 3, 4, 5 house radius, and just inviting them in, like, you like the neighborhood, who do you know amongst your family, friends, and colleagues, who might be interested in this home. Some of them are just tire kickers, they go by the house every day and they just want to go inside and take a look. But I've actually had a couple of instances where neighbors said, oh yeah, no, my cousin's looking, or this one's looking, that one looking. So and then they subsequently came to the open house over the weekend. So yeah, don't forget the neighbors.
I love it. I think that's a great thing to do. And the others, if we've forgotten, just listed, just sold postcards, phone calls. If you're feeling comfortable, door knocked. Now, I personally would wear a shirt that said vaccinated, but if I door knock, but I don't want to get into politics. I have a vaccinated, never mind. I won't share that one. Cheryl, you had one other thought.
I was just going to say to the people that have not been in the business for a long time, just to continue to do these type of calls, or continue to associate ask questions of the people that have been in the business for a long, long time. And all it is just a different beast. We're always about providing helpful information and educating the consumer. We just need to, when the market changes a little bit, just educate a different consumer or in a different way. But people always want to buy, and people always want to sell, and people always want to invest. And there's always real estate out there to people doing business. It's just a different beast of education and providing different information to everybody.
I love it. And I think you're spot on. I'm excited about it because, again, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity, and that's everything for self-improvement to value propositions to financial opportunities. And I'll leave you with this one analogy that Kate of Vermont's probably going to get a little tired of hearing. But you guys may or may not know the movie 300. It was based upon a true event where 300 Spartans kept off 10,000 Persians for, I think, like 2-3 days. What's interesting is, hey, it's on the internet, so what I'm about to say supposedly is true because it's on the internet, is the shield was the most important piece of the, let me just tell my 2 o'clock, I'm going to be 2 minutes or 1 minute. There we go. Sorry about that. I'll finish this up quick. The shield was the most important piece of a Spartan's toolkit, armory, whatever you want. Not the sword, not the spear, not the dagger. And it was because it protected the other Spartans. And then again, by when they operated in unison, they could achieve so much. In this case, 300 soldiers keeping off 10,000 Spartans for a couple, or Persians. So my challenge to you is that I believe at Keller Williams, our shield is our culture. And so I'm going to leave you guys with a thought that if you saw some information back and forth that helped you, and these are maybe people at Keller Williams agents that you haven't even met before, if it helped you, then I challenge you to better earn your shield. Get to your market centers, training events, the culture events, because we all need a little culture. Zoom's great, but it's not oxytocin you get getting in a room in a meeting. Also, if you implement something that seems to have been helpful, share that with one of your fellow agents so that we can better shield each other from the changes that are coming and thrive in the new market that we're heading into. So that being said, guys, it's an honor and privilege to be with you guys today. Really appreciate all you're doing. Brooke, we're looking forward to seeing you in Vermont. I'm going to do smoked ribeye next week, cherry smoked ribeye and some brisket and pork belly. 28th in Vermont. If you want some good barbecue, great education, head on up to our mid-year advance. David, great to see you. Janet, Cheryl, everybody, thank you for your contributions. Go slay dragons.
Bye, gang.